My name is Sable. I am 28 years old, I run my own business and I pay my own bills. I have spent my entire adult life trying to earn a place in a family that never quite made room for me. And on the night my parents celebrated 35 years of marriage in front of every person they have ever cared about, my father pulled me close, smiled at the crowd, and called me the mistake they decided to keep. My mother laughed and said I was harmless, just not very useful. I smiled back, I left without a word, and I erased them from my life completely. 3 years later, I opened my front door and found 2 police officers standing on my porch. But before I tell you what happened that morning, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell me where you are watching from. If this story is already hitting close to home, go ahead and hit that like button right now, and subscribe if you have not already, because this story does not end where you think it does. What my family did not know when they laughed at me that night is that silence can be the most strategic thing a person ever chooses. Stay with me. Now let me take you back to where it all began. I had been a freelance digital strategist for 4 years when my father called me personally to invite me to his anniversary dinner. He never called me directly. Everything in our family ran through my mother Diane or my older brother Ambrose. Garrett, my father, was the founder of Hargrove Supply Company, a mid-sized regional distribution business in Ohio. Ambrose had been working there since he was 22 and was treated accordingly. I had left Ohio at 23 and built my own income from scratch in Denver. My parents called it running away. I called it the only option I had. When Garrett called that evening, he sounded warm. He said he wanted the whole family together. He said 35 guests, a private event room at a good restaurant in Columbus. I stood in my apartment and felt something cautious move through me. I bought a plane ticket. In the weeks before the trip, Diane texted me 3 times asking about my outfit and what I had been working on. I answered carefully. I did not let myself expect too much, but I did not shut the door on it either. I got my hair done. I packed a dress I actually liked. The night before I flew out, I told my friend Alaric that I thought maybe this was the kind of moment families use to start over. He listened without telling me I was wrong. He also did not tell me I was right. The restaurant was nice. 35 people who all knew each other well and me who knew most of them only by name. Extended family, business associates of Garrett's, friends of Diane's from church. Diane greeted me at the door with a 2-second hug. Ambrose nodded from across the room. His wife Lenora gave me a polite smile. Nobody asked about my flight. I found my seat. I made conversation. I raised my glass during the toasts. Diane cried during Ambrose's toast about what their parents had built together. I raised my glass with everyone else and felt nothing sharp about it. The evening was going fine. That is the part that made what happened next so particular. Toward the end of dinner, Garrett took the microphone again. He had been warm all night, relaxed in his element with a room full of people who admired him. He talked about Ambrose, about what a fine man he had become. He talked about Diane and what 35 years meant. Then he looked at me, he waved me over. I stood up, smoothed my dress, walked to him. He put his arm around my shoulder. He said, and this one here, well, she was not exactly part of the plan. He paused, light laughter started at the edges of the room. But we decided to keep her, our little keepable mistake. The laughter spread, not cruel, the kind of laughter that happens when everyone assumes it is a joke between people who love each other. Garrett was grinning, he squeezed my shoulder. Then Diane spoke from her seat, loud enough for the whole room to hear. She is harmless, just not very useful. Maury laughter. Someone nearby said, "Oh, that is terrible," in a tone that meant they found it funny. Ambrose was looking at the table in front of him. He did not laugh, he did not say a word. I stood there with my father's arm around me, and my mother's sentence floating in the air, and 35 people waiting for me to laugh along. I did not cry, I did not freeze. I felt something go very quiet inside me. I smiled, real enough that no one in that room could tell the difference. I stepped back from my father's arm. I clapped along with the tail end of the laughter as if I was included in it. I walked back to my seat. I sat for 4 minutes. I drank the rest of my water. I folded my napkin. Then I picked up my bag, said a quiet goodbye to the cousin next to me and walked out. I did not find Garrett or Diane to say goodnight. I did not look for Ambrose. In the car back to my hotel, I did not think about what had just happened. I focused on the road outside the window. At the hotel, I booked a 6 a.m. flight back to Denver. Then I spent 45 minutes blocking every number connected to my family on my phone. I blocked them on every platform, email, everything. I did not send a message explaining why. I turned off the lamp and went to sleep. I landed back in Denver at 8:15 in the morning. I took a cab home, made coffee, and opened my laptop. The first week after that dinner, I did two things. I worked, and I methodically removed my family from every part of my administrative life. I called my bank and removed Diane from an old savings account. I corrected an emergency contact form with my health insurance provider that still had Garrett listed. I updated my lease paperwork. I changed the beneficiary on a small life insurance policy. I was not dramatic about any of it. By the end of that week, there was no administrative thread connecting my life to my family. I noticed the absence of that connection and understood it as relief. Before the anniversary dinner, I had already been considering expanding my freelance work. I had more clients than I could handle alone. I had been turning down projects. After the dinner, I stopped hesitating. I registered an LLC in Colorado. I named it Clearline Digital. I signed a short-term lease on a small shared office space and brought on 2 contractors. 8 months in, Clearline had 6 active clients. 14 months in, it had 11. I hired a third employee named Petra, who handled client communications with a level of calm efficiency I respected immediately. There were hard weeks. Contracts fell through. A client in month 9 disputed an invoice and made it unpleasant. I handled each difficulty without falling apart. What I learned during that period: I'm a good decision maker when the noise is removed. I had been operating for years with a version of myself shaped by being told I was peripheral. I stopped operating that way. Alaric had been in my life for 3 years before the anniversary dinner. We met at a co-working space when I was fully freelance, and he was building an independent publishing consultancy. After the dinner, he was the only person I told what had actually happened. I told him factually. He said, "What do you need right now?" Not what I was going to do about it, not whether I was okay, just what I needed. I said I needed someone to have lunch with on Thursdays and not talk about my family. He said that was manageable. For the next 3 years he was consistent. He showed up without hovering. He celebrated Clearline's growth genuinely. When things got difficult later, he said the one thing that helped me think clearly. 14 months after the anniversary dinner, I relocated to Santa Fe, New Mexico. When Clearline became stable enough to operate remotely, I made the move. I found a house to rent in a quiet neighborhood. I joined a small business owner group that met twice a month. I started attending a ceramics class on Saturday mornings. I built friendships slowly and intentionally. A woman named Odette, who ran a textile shop downtown, became someone I had dinner with regularly. A retired professor named Walt, who attended the same business group, became an informal mentor. These were people who knew me only as who I was now, not who my family had told me I was. 3 years and 2 months after the anniversary dinner, on a Tuesday morning in October, I opened my front door and found 2 police officers on my porch. They were calm and professional. One of them spoke. "Ma'am, I am Officer Delgado and this is Officer Tran. We are doing a welfare check requested by a family member in Ohio. We just need to confirm you are safe and well." I told them I was fine. I answered their questions. They were satisfied in 5 minutes. Before they left, Officer Delgado mentioned that the requester had noted a medical situation in the family. After they left, I stood in my kitchen and processed what had just happened. My family had found my address. Someone in Ohio had searched long enough to find where I lived. I called Alaric. He listened and then he said, "They are not looking for you because they miss you. They are looking for you because they need something." I already knew that. Hearing it said plainly helped. 2 days later, a letter arrived from a law firm in Columbus called Kowalski and Fenn, attorneys at law. The letter stated that my father Garrett had suffered an ischemic stroke 6 weeks prior and was in a rehabilitation facility. It stated that Garrett had requested contact with me and that the family was requesting I respond regarding matters of a legal and personal nature. I read it twice. I set it on the counter and went to my office to finish a client deliverable due that afternoon. I did not read it again until the following morning. What I felt was not grief, not relief, not guilt. Something older and harder to name. The particular weight that comes from caring about someone who has caused you real harm. I did not call the law firm, not yet. 1 week after the letter arrived, I was walking out of a coffee shop downtown when I nearly walked into a man standing outside. It was Ambrose. He looked older, he said my name. I stopped, I did not run, I looked at him and waited. He started with our father. He said Garrett was not doing well. He said the stroke had affected his ability to manage the business and that there were decisions to be made. He said the company needed my involvement because there were ownership documents that included my name, documentation Garrett had put in place years ago that I may not be aware of. Then his tone shifted. He told me I was being selfish. He said I always ran away when things got difficult. He said if I did not respond to the attorneys, the family would have no choice but to pursue legal action regarding company documents I was named in. The word pursue sat in the air between us. I looked at my brother and said I would speak with my own attorney. I said he should not come to my home. I walked past him. I was shaking slightly by the time I reached my car, not from fear, from the effort of holding steady in a moment I had not planned for. 3 days after that, a handwritten letter arrived from Diane. 4 pages, careful handwriting that told me she had written it more than once. She wrote about Garrett's stroke in detail. She wrote about the fear of the first night in the hospital. She wrote about sitting in the waiting room alone because Ambrose had to leave to manage a crisis at the company. She wrote about me as a child, a birthday when I made her a card out of construction paper, a road trip to Michigan when I was 10 and fell asleep against the car window. She did not apologize. She came close once, writing that she knew some things in the family had been hurtful and that she wished they had done better, but she did not name the anniversary dinner. She moved past it quickly. The last page was about needing me to come home or at least respond, because Garrett had asked for me specifically. She wrote that whatever had happened between us, he was still my father. I read the letter at my kitchen table. I read it again. I put it in a drawer. I did not sleep well that night. In the 2 weeks that followed, I went through a difficult internal stretch. I functioned. I delivered client work. I attended my ceramics class. I had dinner with Odette on a Thursday. But at night and in quiet moments, I was visited by things I thought I had finished with. The anniversary dinner replayed in detail. Older things came up too. Being 12 and overhearing Garrett tell a colleague that his son was the one who would take over the business someday. Being 19 and presenting a business idea I had developed over months, and watching both my parents look at Ambrose afterward as though waiting for his verdict. One afternoon I called Alaric and said I did not know what the right thing to do was. He said that was different from not knowing what I was going to do. I sat with that distinction. On a Saturday afternoon in the 3rd week after Ambrose's visit, it rained hard in Santa Fe. I had planned to drive to a plant nursery, but the rain was heavy, so I turned into a small independent bookstore on Canyon Road that I had walked past dozens of times but never entered. I walked the shelves without looking for anything specific. I pulled a book from a shelf not because of the title, but because the spine caught my eye. The title was The Power of the Quiet One, by a psychologist and organizational consultant named Dr. Miriam Voss. The back described it as a book about people who are underestimated in their families and organizations, and how that underestimation becomes a specific kind of power when the person stops trying to correct it. I sat in a chair near the window and read for 2 hours. Then I bought the book. The book did not fix anything, but it gave me a framework for something I had felt but not been able to name. Dr. Voss writes about how people who are dismissed in their families often develop a particular set of skills. They learn to observe without being watched, to build without being credited, to understand systems because no one explains them and they have to figure things out alone. I read that and thought about Clearline. I built it from nothing. No family support, no inherited network, no startup capital from a father who had money. I built it because I had to and because I was capable of it. I went home that afternoon and opened my laptop, not to work, to look at what I actually had. I listed it, a profitable agency with 11 active clients and 3 employees, a reputation in my field that I built myself, no debt, real savings, skills that took years to develop. And something else, my name was on documents related to Hargrove's supply company that I had never signed away. That meant I had legal standing I had never explored. I called Alaric. I told him I had been thinking about this the wrong way. I had been treating my family's contact as a threat to manage, but there was another way to look at it. He was quiet for a moment, Then he said, "Are you thinking about going toward it instead of away from it?" I said I was thinking about it. The following Monday morning I wrote a list, not of emotions or grievances, facts. My name was on company documents I had never reviewed. Ambrose had been running Hargrove Supply with increasing autonomy for at least 3 years. The company reached out to me through a law firm, which meant they needed something from me legally. I had skills directly relevant to what a distribution company needed in the current market: digital growth strategy, operational communication, and client acquisition systems. I had not been given a seat at that table, but I might already have a legal position at it. I looked at that list for a long time. Then I started making calls. I spent 4 days researching attorneys who specialized in family business law and shareholder rights. I was not looking for the most aggressive option. I was looking for precise and clear. I found Ansel Whitmore through a referral from Walt. Ansel practiced in Albuquerque and had 20 years of experience in closely held company disputes. He was direct in our first call and did not oversell what he could do. I sent him the letter from Kowalski and Fenn and everything I knew about my connection to Hargrove Supply. He came back to me 5 days later. What he found: Garrett had listed me as a 10% shareholder in Hargrove Supply in a document drawn up 11 years ago. The document was never revoked. I was never formally bought out, never signed a relinquishment, never received any shareholder communication. Ansel told me I had been a shareholder for 11 years without knowing it. I had rights to financial disclosures, meeting minutes, and voting on certain company decisions that Ambrose had been making unilaterally. I asked Ansel what my options were. He walked me through them. I chose the one that required the most preparation, but created the most durable outcome. Through my work at Clearlane, I had developed a relationship with a business consultant named Priya Nair, who advised regional companies on growth and acquisition positioning. I called Priya and described the situation in general terms: a regional distribution company, family-owned, a founder who was medically incapacitated, a second-generation leader running it without proper oversight, and a market position that had likely degraded because the company had not modernized its infrastructure. Priya was interested. She said, "If what you are describing is accurate, there are investors who would be interested in the right kind of growth play here, but the board structure would need to change." I told her I knew that was the point. Through Ansel's formal shareholder information requests, I received financial disclosures and meeting minutes from Hargrove going back 3 years. I also located 2 former employees and spoke with a logistics coordinator named Dwight, who had left the company 18 months earlier. What Dwight told me: under Ambrose's management, the company had lost 2 of its 5 largest distribution contracts in 18 months. He replaced them with smaller accounts that had worse margins. He made a capital expenditure decision on fleet equipment without the board vote he was legally required to hold. He had also begun directing company supplier relationships to benefit a separate LLC he had registered in Delaware 18 months prior, a company with no disclosed connection to Hargrove. I documented everything. I organized it into a clear file and reviewed it with Ansel twice. Hargrove's board had 4 members: Garrett, Ambrose, and 2 outside members named Fletcher and Constance. Ansel sent formal notice of my shareholder status and requested an emergency board meeting. Ambrose's attorney responded with a letter attempting to challenge the original shareholder document. Ansel provided a detailed counter establishing that the document was properly executed and never legally invalidated. The meeting was scheduled by video conference. I prepared for 6 days. The morning of the meeting I was up at 5:30. I reviewed my materials one final time. I was not nervous the way I expected to be. I was focused. Fletcher opened the meeting. Ambrose was on screen with his attorney. I was present with Ansel. I presented in 3 sections. The first established my legal standing as a shareholder. The second presented the financial deterioration of the company under current management, the lost contracts, the unauthorized capital expenditure, the Delaware LLC, all supported by the disclosed documents. The third section presented a digital growth strategy I had developed using my knowledge of the industry and my expertise in client acquisition. I spoke for 40 minutes. I was clear and specific. I did not raise my voice. I did not make it personal. When I finished, Constance asked 2 pointed questions about the Delaware LLC. Ansell provided the documentation. Fletcher asked about the capital expenditure vote. Ansell confirmed the legal requirement that had been bypassed. Ambrose said the Delaware LLC was a separate personal venture with no conflict of interest. His attorney added supporting language. Constance asked for documentation to support that claim. Ambrose's attorney said it would be provided. Fletcher called a recess. After 40 minutes, the board reconvened. Fletcher announced that Ambrose's operational authority was being placed on suspension, pending a full audit of the Delaware LLC and the capital expenditure decision. Then Constance spoke directly to me. She said the growth strategy I had presented was the most concrete forward-looking document she had seen regarding Hargrove in 3 years. She asked if I would be willing to continue engagement with the board in an advisory capacity while the audit proceeded. I said yes. Ambrose disconnected from the call without speaking again. The independent audit took 11 weeks. It confirmed that Ambrose had been directing Hargrove's supplier relationships to benefit his private Delaware company without disclosure or compensation to Hargrove. The capital expenditure bypass was also confirmed as a procedural violation. The board voted to remove Ambrose from his operational role. He resigned before the formal removal vote was held. His attorney negotiated the terms of his departure quietly. Ansell informed me of each development as it happened. I did not celebrate. I called Alaric and told him the audit was complete. He asked how I felt. I said I felt like someone who had been standing in a doorway for a long time and had finally decided which room to walk into. Priya's investor contact conducted a valuation of Hargrove following the audit. The results showed a company underperforming its market position, but with recoverable assets and a solid regional reputation. Priya's network identified 2 investors interested in a structured growth arrangement. The board, reconstituted with an additional outside member, voted to bring me on in a formal executive capacity. My title was Chief Growth and Digital Strategy Officer. I would work remotely from Santa Fe and travel to Columbus quarterly. I negotiated my own terms. Ansell reviewed everything. I accepted because the role was real and the company needed what I actually knew how to do. Not because I needed my family's approval. Not because I wanted to prove something to Garrett, because it was a good professional decision. 3 weeks after my role was formalized, I received a call from a number I did not recognize. I answered it. It was my father. His speech was slower than I remembered, a residual effect of the stroke. He sounded older. He asked if I had a few minutes. I said yes. He did not go around it. He said he had been thinking about the anniversary dinner for 3 years. He said what he said that night was wrong. He said he used to think it was the kind of teasing that families do, and that I was too sensitive for leaving without a word. He said the months in rehabilitation gave him time he did not want to think about things he had been avoiding. He said, "You were not a mistake. I do not know why I said it like that. I think I thought being hard on you would make you tougher. I did not think about what it cost you." He did not ask for forgiveness. He did not ask me to come home. He said he was glad I was well and that I had done something real with my life. I listened. I did not tell him it was fine, because it was not entirely fine, and I was done saying things that were not true to make other people comfortable. I said, "I hear you, Dad. Thank you for saying it." I meant both sentences, neither of them fully. After I hung up, I sat in my office for a while. I thought about the girl who stood in front of 35 people and smiled so nobody could see what was happening inside her. I thought about the years of being positioned as an afterthought in the story my family told about itself. 2 months later, Diane called. The conversation was shorter and harder. She went around things. She talked about how difficult the past few years had been. She talked about Ambrose and how his situation had hurt the family. She said she hoped I could find a way to come back to them. She did not say the words I would have needed to hear about the anniversary night. I was polite but not warm. I said I was open to a relationship, but that it would need to look different from what it used to be. She did not fully understand what I meant. I did not explain it further. Ambrose did not contact me, not during the audit, not after his resignation, not after Garrett's call. I think about that sometimes. He watched our father say what he said at that dinner and looked at the table. I do not know what he thought then or what he thinks now. I do not reach out to him. I leave that situation without forcing a resolution on it. 3 months after the board meeting, I still wake up early in Santa Fe. Clearline Digital continues to run. Petra has taken on more responsibility, and there is a real possibility she moves into a partnership role within the year. My work at Hargrove takes several hours a week and is growing. I have already identified 3 digital acquisition channels the company has never used, and I am building the strategy document now. Alaric visited for a long weekend in November. We ate good food, walked a lot, talked about things that had nothing to do with family or business. On his last evening, he said watching me go through this had shown him something about how I handled difficulty. He was specific about what he meant. I thanked him the way I used to deflect compliments, and then I stopped myself and said it the way I meant it. I am 31 years old. I live in a house with good light. I have work I am proud of. I have people around me who know who I actually am. And when I think about that night at the anniversary dinner, I do not feel the same thing I used to feel. The woman who walked out of that restaurant did not know yet what she was capable of. She only knew she was done pretending the wound was not real. That decision, that single quiet decision to stop pretending, is what made everything else possible. If any part of this story landed with you, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had someone in your own family underestimate you, dismiss you, or make you the punchline of a joke in front of people who should have known better? Drop your story in the comments. I read every single one. If this is the first video of mine you have watched, please subscribe right now because there are more stories like this one and you do not want to miss them. Hit the like button if you believe that walking away with your dignity intact is sometimes the most powerful move a person can make. Share this with someone you know who has been told they are not enough by the people who were supposed to build them up. Thank you for being here and for staying until the end. You are not a mistake. You were never a mistake. Take care of yourself and I will see you in the next one.